I'd been in and out of consciousness for 2 days, drifting somewhere between surgical sedation and morphine-soaked dreams. When I noticed it, just a moment, just long enough to wedge itself under my skin like a splinter I couldn't shake. The bedside clock blinked 3:12 a.m. I couldn't move much. The incision across my stomach was raw and swollen, but my eyes fluttered open at the sound of laughter, hers. Not the soft laugh of a nurse or late-night technician. No, this one was lighter, rehearsed, familiar. Brielle, my sister, the one who'd flown in from Miami to help after my emergency hysterectomy. My husband, Cameron, had insisted she stay, said it would ease the burden while I recovered. "She's family, Jules," he'd whispered, brushing hair from my forehead before the anesthesia took me. "We've got you." Through the sliver of space where the curtain hadn't been pulled all the way shut, I could see silhouettes, his broad shoulders leaning forward, her tiny frame perched on the edge of the window bench. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, until she touched his wrist, slowly, intimately, like someone who already knew what the inside of his palms felt like. I blinked hard. Pain pinched my side, but I didn't flinch. They didn't know I was awake. She said something I couldn't hear. He smiled, that smile, the one that made me fall in love with him 10 years ago on the floor of our very first cafe. She reached up and tucked his collar just right, and when he touched her cheek, her eyes fluttered shut. Not like a sister, not like a friend, but like a woman waiting for a kiss. That's when I knew. Something had been happening under my nose, and the person I trusted most had stepped into my shoes. While I lay in a hospital bed missing a part of my body I could never get back. Before we dive deeper, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your country in the comments. It really means a lot to us to see how far our stories reach. And if this is your first time here, welcome to our channel. We share real, raw stories of love, betrayal, and redemption. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us grow and ensures you never miss a moment like this. Back to the story, because this is when it all began. See, just 6 months ago, I was the co-owner of a rising cafe chain across North Carolina, married to a man who could sell sunshine to a blind man, and proud sister to a woman who'd never known stability until I gave her a job and a room in our guest house. My days were full of espresso orders, bookkeeping, and planning expansion meetings with Cameron. My nights were slower, filled with bath oils, movie marathons, and the occasional wine-fueled laughter with Brielle. I never saw it coming. I had no reason to suspect. And yet, as I lay there, body broken but eyes wide open, I realized this wasn't a nightmare. It was the first clear moment I'd had since surgery. And something inside me, just beneath the pain and confusion, started whispering, "Don't let this go." I didn't know it then, but everything in my life was about to be uprooted. And I wasn't going to stop it. Not this time. They came into my hospital room together the next morning, all smiles and sunshine, like they hadn't just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Cameron brought fresh flowers, orange tulips, my favorite, which suddenly felt like a joke. And Brielle carried a to-go tray of my usual chai latte and a spinach croissant. I pretended I'd just woken up, blinking slowly and pressing the nurse call button to mask the shaking in my hand. "Hey, sunshine," Cameron said, brushing a kiss to my forehead, as if nothing had happened. His lips were warm, My skin went cold. "You're looking more alert today," Brielle added, setting the coffee down and fluffing the blanket near my feet. "Nia said you'll be able to go home tomorrow if everything looks good." I nodded, my voice caught in the rawness of my throat. They made light conversation, weather, cafe staffing issues, Brielle's latest client drama on Instagram, but every word hit like static. I could still see her hand on his wrist, his fingers on her cheek, the look in her eyes that had nothing to do with sisterly love. It wasn't the first betrayal I'd felt from Brielle. She'd always been slippery. Our childhood was one long game of me covering for her. Late night calls from the sheriff's office when she got caught sneaking out. Quiet talks with our parents after she took cash from Dad's wallet. When she was 23, I'd flown to Tallahassee to bail her out after a minor theft charge at a boutique where she'd worked. She swore she was changing. "You're the only one who believes in me," she'd said, crying into my coat outside the courthouse. I had believed her. Over and over. I'd opened my home, given her a job, let her walk into the life I'd built with Cameron like it was her own. Maybe part of me wanted to fix her. Maybe another part just didn't want to be alone. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the acting. The way they moved through my room like two people playing roles in a script. She fed me spoonfuls of oatmeal I didn't ask for. He adjusted my IV cords like a man who still loved me. But underneath it all, I saw it now. The practiced timing, the too casual glances, the shared jokes that didn't involve me. When Brielle showed Cameron a meme on her phone and he laughed without showing me, I knew I wasn't being paranoid. I was being excluded. And the more I watched, the more I understood. They weren't ashamed. They were waiting for the right time to tell me. Or maybe for me to stay clueless forever. That night, when the lights dimmed and the hallway quieted, I didn't sleep. I stared at the flowers he brought until they blurred. Then I turned over and grabbed my phone from the tray beside my bed. I scrolled back through old photos, our cafe's grand opening, our 5th anniversary dinner, Christmas mornings where Brielle sat by the tree in the same pajamas I had picked out for her. I looked at their smiles. My husband, my sister, my family, my fools. Then I opened my messages, one from Cameron, sent while he was in the hallway earlier that afternoon. Cameron, getting Brielle settled in the guest room. "Don't worry about anything, babe. We've got everything covered. Love you." Love you. The cruelty of that phrase made my chest ache. I zoomed in on a photo from last summer, Brielle and me sitting on the cafe's patio during our 4th of July celebration. She was leaning into me, sunglasses perched on her head, our matching blue aprons speckled with flour and sweat. She'd insisted on working the register that day to give me a break. I'd thought it was sweet. Now, I wondered what she and Cameron had whispered about when I stepped into the walk-in freezer. The truth wasn't just in what I saw. It was in everything I hadn't seen. The next morning, Dr. Nia Caldwell came to check on my incision. She was older than me by a few years. One of those rare doctors who made you feel like a human being and not just a chart. We'd known each other in college, lost touch after graduation, then reconnected when she moved back to Charlotte last year. I trusted her with my body. Now, I wondered if I could trust her with more. "How's the pain today?" she asked, checking the dressings with gentle fingers. "Tolerable," I said, staring at the ceiling tiles. "But the rest of it's a bit foggy." She gave me a long look. "The rest of it?" I hesitated. "Something's off with Cameron and Brielle." Her eyes sharpened. What kind of off? I turned to look at her fully. They're hiding something. I think they're involved. To her credit, Nia didn't flinch. Do you want me to say that sounds crazy? No, I want you to believe me. She nodded. I do. That moment, that tiny exchange, was everything. For the first time since I saw them together, someone didn't treat me like I was fragile or imagining things. She believed me. It didn't heal the wound, but it made me feel like I wasn't completely alone. And in that small clarity, I made my first decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet, not with words. I was going to watch, document, wait. If they were betting on my weakness, they'd soon learn they were playing the wrong game. That night, when Cameron came to kiss my forehead and Brielle offered to help me change into the comfy robe she brought from home, I smiled and thanked them both. But deep down, I was already gone. A new version of me had opened her eyes in that bed, one who'd been cut open and stitched back together. One who now knew what betrayal smelled like, chai and croissant, and exactly how it sounded, like a laugh that didn't include me. The night before my discharge, I did something I never thought I would. I lied to both of them. Brielle was curled up on the visitor recliner, scrolling through TikTok, and Cameron was rubbing my feet like nothing was wrong. I asked them both, with the softest smile I could muster, if we could take things slow at home. I just want peace, I whispered. No drama, no rushing into anything. Just calm. Cameron kissed my knuckles like he always had before big cafe presentations. Brielle nodded, eyes wide and innocent, like she didn't already have a plan that included stealing my life. In that moment, I wasn't the wife or the sister anymore. I was the ghost of myself, moving through a room of people who thought I hadn't noticed the way they paused when I entered, or how their voices dropped half an octave when I asked where they'd been. But I had noticed. I'd seen everything, and now I would use it. We returned home to our sunlit, craftsman-style house nestled between dogwoods and manicured hedges that suddenly felt staged, sterile. Brielle rolled in a pastel suitcase like she was on vacation. Cameron fussed with the smart thermostat and asked if I wanted the blinds up or down. I asked to rest alone, and when the door clicked softly behind them, I waited 20 minutes, then opened my laptop. The act was over. I started a new document and titled it, The Truth Compiled Evidence. I listed what I knew. 3:12 a.m. Saw physical intimacy between Cameron and Brielle in hospital hallway. Repeated glances, hand touches, and subtle tension in hospital room. July 4th. Cafe patio photo. Visible closeness, now suspicious. Cameron text while outside. Settling Brielle in guest room. Love you. Sent while she was already settled. Then I opened the email I used for vendor outreach, the one Cameron rarely touched. I ordered a discreet, motion-activated voice recorder from a surveillance gear store, then a security cam disguised as a picture frame, and a child monitoring app that could be installed on Cameron's synced iPad in case I needed help checking cafe accounts. The nausea came in waves, but I kept going. Dr. Nia checked in via text that night. Nia, you home? Me, yes. Nia, and them? Me, same. Nia, okay, just say the word if you want someone who sees what you see. I stared at her last message longer than I should have. I'd spent so long thinking I needed to be the glue for everyone else, the peacekeeper. But this wasn't peace. This was sabotage in soft tones and borrowed lipstick. The next morning, Brielle cooked breakfast like she belonged there. She wore one of my old t-shirts, intentionally oversized, intentionally sentimental. The back read, Charlotte Bean, Co. Built with love. The cafe we had poured everything into. The one Cameron and I had named over late-night popcorn and budget spreadsheets 5 years ago. It wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of who we used to be. And now, she was walking through it like she owned it, flipping eggs like they were hers to flip. I excused myself, pretending fatigue. In my bedroom, I installed the camera frame just above my desk. I placed the voice recorder under the hallway table, right outside the kitchen. If they whispered when they thought I was resting, I'd catch every word. Over the next 3 days, I collected more than I expected. Cameron had installed new POS software on the cafe system, but only on his iPad. More efficient for mobile orders, he said. But I caught a glimpse of one message thread, labeled Private, Charlie, Q4. Charlie was the name of our rival cafe group in Raleigh. We had once fought tooth and nail to beat them for a downtown location. Now, it looked like Cameron was pitching them branding ideas. My branding ideas? Brielle, meanwhile, answered phone calls in the hallway with a voice dipped in velvet. I know, I'm just waiting for her to fully recover. Then I'll tell her it's the right thing, just not yet. Then laughter, always the laughter, like she was rehearsing pity. I logged the recordings. I backed up the data twice, once on a USB necklace Nia had given me as a joke gift in college, and once in a private Dropbox folder I labeled recipes. If they found it, they'd think it was menu testing for fall. I didn't eat much that week, just enough to seem okay. Brielle brought me smoothies and Cameron rubbed my back at night, and in those moments, I let myself study them like strangers. I watched the small tells. His hesitation, before kissing me goodnight, the way she flinched every time I touched her arm. The guilt was there. But it wasn't enough to stop them. That's when I knew the truth. They weren't just waiting for me to recover. They were waiting for me to move on. On Thursday, Cameron brought up the cafe expansion plans again. I was thinking maybe we could revisit the Raleigh deal. Brielle's got some ideas on influencer partnerships. Oh? I smiled. That's interesting. And what's Brielle's role in all this? She's been helping with outreach while you've been resting. I looked right at him. How thoughtful. That night, I opened my Dropbox folder, renamed it Closure, and smiled for the first time in days. If this was the story they were writing for me, poor, recovering Julia, who couldn't keep up with a younger sister or a husband with bigger dreams, then I'd let them keep writing, because the final chapter would be mine, and it wouldn't be a quiet one. It didn't take long for Cameron to notice that something had shifted. Not because I said anything, I didn't, but because I'd stopped reacting. I didn't flinch when Brielle accidentally used his mug in the kitchen or when she forgot to knock before walking into our bedroom to check on me. I didn't ask how the cafe meetings were going. I didn't ask anything at all. I just smiled, took my pills, and watched. And that silence made him uncomfortable because Cameron was a man who could manipulate anyone except someone who no longer needed answers. On Friday morning, he asked if I wanted to review our fall budget together like old times. He said it with a tight smile, one I'd seen him use on suppliers he planned to undercut. Sure, I said. Bring it by later. He paused. Later? I'm meeting with someone from a wellness nonprofit. They want me to speak on post-op recovery. A lie. of course. But it was enough to rattle him. I thought you were resting. I smiled. Resting isn't the same as being blind. That afternoon, I went to Nia's office and handed her a flash drive. Voice memos, text logs, 2 camera clips, I said. I need someone to hold on to it who won't panic. She didn't even blink. You think he suspects? I think he's trying to feel out how much I know. Nia leaned forward. And Brielle? I looked out the window. She's either scared or she thinks she's winning. But I was the one beginning to fray. Because watching 2 people you once loved pretend to love you while secretly gutting your life takes a toll. The recordings grew darker. One night, I caught Brielle saying, "She's not going to bounce back from this like she thinks. Cameron, she's soft. She always has been." And he didn't correct her. He just muttered something about handling it when the time is right. That night, I walked barefoot out to the porch in a daze, gripping the phone like it might shatter in my hand. I sat on the steps and let the cold wood ground me as their voices echoed in my ears. Soft. Let them believe that. The next morning, Cameron brought it up casually over breakfast, like we were still partners. The board at Charlie wants to meet in person, he said. Maybe it's time to think about scaling faster. Could be smart to cash out now while valuations are high. I didn't even look up from my oatmeal. Are you suggesting we sell? Not sell, just restructure. You could take some time. Focus on health. You mean, step away quietly? He smiled that rehearsed smile. I mean, you've earned rest, Jules. Maybe Brielle and I could take lead on operations. And there it was. The real plan. The one they thought I was too fogged to understand. Later that night, I checked the cafe's email accounts. Cameron had left his laptop open in the kitchen. He was already forwarding client contacts to a new domain I didn't recognize. I traced the name. Branch Bloom Brands, LLC, registered 2 weeks prior. The listed address, a co-working space in Raleigh, and the registered second contact, B. Harper, my sister. My vision blurred, my chest constricted, not from pain or surprise, but from the fury of knowing. This wasn't just a fling. This was a takeover. I slammed the laptop shut just as Brielle came into the room, hair damp from a shower, wearing the sweatshirt I'd had since grad school. You okay? She asked, brow furrowing. I swallowed the heat in my throat. Fine, just tired. She hovered. You've been really quiet lately. I met her gaze, steady. I've had a lot to think about. She hesitated. You know, we'd never hurt you. And there it was. The lie in the open air, dressed like concern. I tilted my head. Did I say you did? She blinked. No, I appreciate your help, Brielle. Truly. You've always been good at stepping in. She went pale, but said nothing. The next day, my mother called. She was planning a small family dinner next week and wanted to know if Brielle could help with the centerpiece arrangements. She's so artistic, she said fondly. And I have to say, it's so beautiful how close she and Cameron are. Like real siblings. That kind of bond is rare. I stared at the phone like it was hissing in my ear. Real siblings. Beautiful. That night, I cried. The kind of crying that doesn't make noise. I sat on the floor of our closet, gripping the hem of Cameron's old college hoodie, and just let the salt fall silently. Not for him. Not for her. But for me. For every year I'd spent convincing myself I was building something solid. For every time I'd forgiven too fast, trusted too blindly, or played peacemaker at my own expense. By Sunday, I was done crying. My jaw was tight, my hands steady. The recordings were enough now. The financial evidence would speak for itself. But it wasn't just about proving betrayal anymore. It was about preserving myself. And that meant taking back power on my own terms. I called Nia the next morning. "I'm ready," I told her. "For what?" "To remind them who I am." She paused. "And who's that?" I looked in the mirror, face pale but eyes sharp. Someone they should never have underestimated. The invitation arrived on Thursday afternoon, slid under our door in a gold-trimmed envelope. It was from the Charlotte Women in Business Foundation. Our cafe had sponsored 2 events with them in the past, and Cameron had made it a point to stay visible at their annual awards banquet. This year's event was being held at the Sterling Grand Hotel, a ballroom venue with polished marble floors and a reputation for drawing CEOs, local politicians, and journalists looking for quotes. Cameron opened it first. "I'll go in your place," he said, already moving toward his suit closet. "They'll understand." Brielle chimed in from the hallway. "I can accompany him, just as a representative of the brand. Keep things smooth while you recover." I nodded slowly. Yes, that's probably best. Neither of them noticed the way I tapped my fingers on the arm of the sofa. 4 beats. Just like the click of a camera shutter. What they didn't know was that I'd already called the event coordinator, Elaine Marsh, a sharp woman who remembered me from a panel on women-owned startups. I told her, carefully and quietly, that I'd like to pre-record a thank you message to be played during the event, since I'm unable to attend due to surgery. She agreed immediately. "We're happy to give you that platform, Julia. You've been a real inspiration for our community." That Friday night, the ballroom sparkled with gold and navy decor. Crystal glasses clinked, lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd as the presentation screens illuminated above the stage. Cameron and Brielle sat at table 9 near the front, basking in attention, surrounded by contacts I had once cultivated myself. Cameron adjusted his tie. Brielle sipped champagne. They were laughing when the speaker took the mic and said, "We'd like to share a special message from a woman whose story and strength has inspired so many, Julia Benton." The screen lit up. My face appeared, softly lit, seated against a backdrop of the cafe's original brick wall. I smiled gently. "Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this space. While I couldn't be there in person tonight, I wanted to share something more meaningful than a simple thank you." In the video, I reached to the side and lifted a sleek silver remote. I've always believed that businesses are built on trust between founders, partners, and the families who support them. But sometimes, what we build in daylight gets dismantled in the dark. The screen cut to security footage, grainy but clear. It showed Cameron in our kitchen, speaking quietly on the phone. "I just need her to sign the agreement. Once it's done, we're good to move forward. She won't know until it's too late." Then another clip. Brielle, in the hallway, whispering, "She's still on meds. It's fine. She won't suspect anything until we're already out." The room went silent. "I trusted my husband," I continued in the video. "I trusted my sister. I brought her into our home. I believed in their support during one of the most painful medical recoveries of my life. Instead, they planned a business theft and an emotional betrayal while pretending to care for me." Then I played one more audio clip. This one from the living room recorder. Cameron's voice, low and smug. She's fragile. Always has been. That's why we're moving forward without her. She'll crumble before she fights back. And Brielle's reply, good, because I want her life. A wave of gas broke across the ballroom like thunder. Forks clinked against plates. A woman at the next table covered her mouth. One man muttered, Jesus Christ. Back to my video. Some people build legacies. Others try to steal them. But what they forget is, when you wound someone who once loved you, and they survive it, they come back sharper than you can imagine. I smiled one last time, slow and controlled. Thank you for listening. And thank you for reminding me I still have a voice. The video ended. Cameron looked shell-shocked. Brielle's face turned paper white. Whispers turned into stares. And someone from the city's small business bureau abruptly excused herself from their table. Within minutes, the phones at their table began lighting up. Texts, calls, emails, investors, friends, former clients. Everyone had seen the truth. But I wasn't done. The next morning, a press release went out from Benton & Co., signed by me, announcing Cameron Benton's permanent separation from the cafe brand due to ethical misconduct and breach of founders' trust. Attached were screenshots of LLC documents showing Branch Bloom Brands, the new company Cameron and Brielle had quietly established, alongside evidence that client lists and internal strategies had been forwarded without consent. By noon, I had received 4 new investment offers. By 3 p.m., 3 of our biggest wholesale partners publicly cut ties with Cameron's new LLC, citing professional values. The brand they tried to build behind my back collapsed within a day. As for Brielle, she lost a major PR client when word of the Gala footage hit social media. The video was screen recorded, clipped, and reposted with hashtags like Anxious Sister Saboteur and Cafe Queen Returns. I didn't post any of it. I didn't need to. The truth had momentum of its own. By Sunday, they'd both vanished from the house. No notes, no texts, just gone. I stood in the doorway of our living room, the one where they'd sat together whispering while I rested upstairs, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was standing. By Monday morning, Cameron's email access had been revoked from every cafe account. I changed the banking permissions, reissued the vendor contracts, and met with our legal advisor, Rachel Lynn, who filed an immediate breach of partnership motion. We're not just severing ties, I told her. We're scrubbing his fingerprints off the brand. She nodded, already drafting the press language. He won't be able to operate anything legitimate in this state by the time I'm done. By Wednesday, he'd taken a train out of Charlotte. Rachel informed me that one of our former angel investors had filed a formal complaint against Branch Bloom Brands, citing intellectual property theft. The proposed lawsuit would expose every document Cameron and Brielle had funneled from our back end, including proprietary vendor strategies, internal SOPs, and upcoming seasonal marketing plans. The gall of it still made me sick, but not surprised. As for Brielle, she tried to lay low. She deleted her Instagram for a week after clips from the Gala hit local news channels. But it was too late. A mid-tier marketing agency she'd been freelancing with released a bland statement about reassessing partnerships. She was quietly dropped from 2 more brand projects that same week. Her face was now tied to the Betrayal clip, the one where she whispers, "She's still on meds. She won't suspect anything." It became a soundbite on TikTok. People dubbed it over-dramatic betrayals, cheaters caught on camera, even parodies. I didn't laugh, but I didn't stop it either. A week later, my parents came over for dinner. We hadn't spoken much since the reveal. Mom had been blindsided, and Dad was still in disbelief. "We thought she'd grown up," Mom whispered at the table, unable to meet my eyes. "She told us you were letting her help with business transitions." "She helped herself," I said evenly. Dad put his fork down. "You were the one who carried her every time she fell, Jules. She used that kindness as currency." I nodded, but didn't speak. I'd said what needed saying already. What they did with it was up to them. That night, I walked through the cafe alone after closing. I paused by the chalkboard wall Brielle had painted, with customer quotes last fall. One of them still read, "Feels like family in here." I stared at the words until the letters blurred, then picked up a cloth and wiped it clean. 3 days later, I reopened our flagship cafe under a new name, Hazel and Pine. It was the name I had pitched years ago before we settled on Charlotte Bean Co. For branding reasons. Hazel, for the color of my eyes. Pine, for resilience. Evergreen, rooted, quietly strong. Customers returned in waves, not just for the coffee, but for the story. I heard them whisper at the counter. "That's her. She's the one from the video." Honestly, good for her. I didn't bask in it, but I let it warm me, like sunlight through the window after too many cold mornings. Cameron sent one email, just one. No subject line, no apology, just, "You destroyed everything we built." I didn't reply, but I did forward it to Rachel with the subject line, "Proof of zero remorse." She added it to the archive. Brielle, for her part, made one attempt to call. I let it ring, then sent her a voicemail. "You didn't just cross a line, Brielle. You burned the bridge and thought I'd still carry you across the river. I hope you find what you're looking for, just not in my life." The cafe grew stronger. We picked up 3 new retail partners that quarter. I promoted Cassie, one of our original baristas, to operations manager. She cried when I handed her the keys to the back office. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," she whispered. I smiled. That makes 2 of us. And that was the truth. I hadn't just lost a husband or a sister. I'd lost pieces of myself I didn't even know I'd given away. Quiet concessions, endless forgiveness, the emotional labor of always being the strong one. But in that loss, something new took root. Not revenge, balance. For the first time in years, I wasn't bending to keep people comfortable. I was standing still, in my own name, on my own ground. 6 months later, I woke up to birdsong instead of lies. There was no extra pair of shoes at the front door, no misplaced mug in the sink, no half-whispered hallway conversations that made my chest ache. Just the sun pouring through my kitchen window, the hum of the espresso machine warming up, and the gentle creak of floorboards as I moved through a home that no longer felt like a battleground. I started keeping a journal again. Nothing dramatic, just little moments I wanted to remember. A note from a regular at Hazel and Pine who said our decaf was better than his ex's honesty. A drawing from a little girl who visits with her dad every Thursday and calls me Miss J. The first time I laughed so hard I had to hold my stomach. The first time I went a full day without thinking about Cameron or Brielle at all. Somewhere in those pages, I stopped writing about pain and started writing about presence. People still ask what happened between us, those who know the headlines, but not the heart of it. I tell them the truth in the simplest way I can. They mistook my silence for weakness, and I mistook their closeness for care. We were both wrong. The truth is, I'll never fully understand how it started. Whether it was a spark that caught during late cafe nights, or a betrayal that had been simmering long before I ever went under the knife. But I've stopped obsessing over the why. Closure didn't come from them apologizing, because they never did. It came from me deciding the damage would stop at me and not spread through the rest of my life like rot. Cameron moved to Atlanta. Last I heard, he's working with a low-visibility marketing firm and avoiding interviews. His reputation took a hit he couldn't recover from, especially after the IP lawsuit settled in my favor. He tried to rebrand. It didn't stick. Brielle moved back to Florida. She's staying with an aunt I haven't spoken to in years. She sent a handwritten note last month, 5 lines long, said she wasn't ready to ask for forgiveness, but hoped I knew she regretted everything. I read it. I didn't reply. Regret, I've learned, isn't the same as remorse, and remorse isn't always enough. But I'm not bitter. Not anymore. Bitterness is heavy, and I've been carrying too much for too long. Instead, I've let the silence speak. I've let the truth live on in the choices I make now. How I run my cafe, how I choose my friends, how I listen to my gut instead of apologizing for it. I take walks in the mornings before the doors open. No headphones, no phone. Just the rhythm of my own feet and the sound of life moving forward. Hazel and Pine is thriving. We're opening a second location next spring, this time with a team that respects boundaries, loyalty, and leadership. People keep asking if I'll speak again at the Women in Business banquet. I think I will. Not to talk about betrayal, but to talk about rebuilding. Because survival is not the most impressive part of my story. The comeback is. And if I could tell the woman I was a year ago, curled up in a hospital bed with stitches in her belly and heartbreak in her chest, just one thing, it would be this. You're not broken. You're being rebuilt. One scar at a time. One truth at a time. One boundary at a time. And what's coming next? It's not revenge. It's your life. Finally, your life.